On their bid for a perfect regular season, you can see right there. Up next, they host Washington before traveling to Buffalo, then Cincinnati, and finishing home versus Indy and at Cleveland. And I have some bad news for Steelers fans like yourself, Stephen A. Bud Dupree has tore his ACL. The team has just confirmed that. Max, I want to start with you here, though. Are you confident that the Steelers will have a perfect regular season after that narrow win against the Ravens, who didn't have many of their starters?
No, I wouldn't put it like that. I wouldn't put it as I'm confident they will go undefeated, but I think their odds just went up, not just because they got a game closer, but because, and the Dupree thing stinks. I mean, like, you want to get out of there without a defender, losing him for the season. That hurts the Steelers. But if that were going to happen anyway, right? Like, if you're good, that's just a fact. Let's table that for a second. They have Washington next week on a short week. Remember, they're supposed to have their bye. They had to take it early because of the Titans. Then they had to take their bye late, a mini bye late. But then it's not a mini bye, and now they're on a short week again, guys. So, that really hurts. And what did Ryan Clark tell us, Stephen A.? Best time to play the Ravens or the Steelers after they play each other. And Washington, which is a no-name brand team and actually a no-name team nowadays, is actually ascending and plays defense and is a little tricky. So that would be a trap game. That would be a tough game otherwise. But, Stephen A., the fact that they won so sloppy and that coach is coming out here basically saying you almost could look at this like a loss sort of, right? Like that's the kind of message he's sending, actually helps the Steelers, who have a tough part of their schedule coming up with the Bills and the Colts and the Browns. I think their odds just went up that they go undefeated.
I'm less confident. I don't like what I saw yesterday. I'm very distressed about it. I don't blame Mike Tomlin for calling him out the way that he did. I'd have him running suicides today. I'd have probably cussed him out after the game yesterday and told him how pathetic that they looked, and this is not reminiscent or replicating any kind of championship caliber play whatsoever. And I would tell you this, the one good news that comes out of this is their schedule, because I don't think the Steelers need to go into the postseason undefeated, because I think they'd probably go home in the first playoff game because obviously things are going to elevate exponentially. People will be far more serious on their P's and Q's, and I think it could ultimately cost them. So I like the idea of the Steelers in all likelihood losing a couple of games before the regular season ends. I believe that they will lose at Buffalo, and I think either Indy at home or Cleveland on the road at the end of the season are games they will also lose. So I think that the Steelers will probably end up going 14-2. At least I hope that's the case. I'm not even ruling out a loss to Indy. I think that between Buffalo, Indy, and Cleveland, they'll lose 2 of those games, go into the postseason 14-2, but I think they need to get humbled. I don't think that Baltimore, because they looked equally awful, even though they had legitimate excuse not having Lamar Jackson, having McSorley and RG3 throw the football, basically do nothing with the exception of the 70-yard touchdown pass at the end of the game by McSorley. The bottom line is that the Steelers' offense was the story to me because they looked horrendous. It looked inexcusable.
Where is your imagination?
Excuse me?
As a Steelers fan, where's your imagination? As a Steelers fan, Stephen A., the Steelers might be. They're arguably the greatest franchise in the history of the NFL. You could argue it, especially the Super Bowl era. And that franchise,
I haven't had a Super Bowl since 2008, Max.
In a year where we need something interesting, some good news. Stephen A., they have a chance. It's an outside chance, but they're still undefeated this late in the season. Well, you have to be rooting for that.
Max mediocre. You know how you are. I mean, give a dog a bone every now and then. You perfectly good with that. I need more, Max Kellerman. I need more. All right? Damn it, it's been since 2008 that they won a chip. They lost the Super Bowl in 2010. It's been more than a decade. I want a damn Super Bowl, okay? And I want them to be able to compete with Patrick Mahomes. That is where I stand.
On the punt return, whether it's Big Ben fumbling or throwing an interception, or whether it's getting beat on a long play from Hollywood Brown, cutting back against the grain, all of those sort of different things, whether it was RG3 scampering, whether it's the receiver Johnson dropping a number of passes, he plays receiver. You got to catch the ball, bruh. Slants wide open, touchdown, Ben puts it on you. It's receivers in the league that would die to have that opportunity to score a touchdown. I get it. That's why I say they've got to clean this stuff up. They've got to show me something if they plan on playing Kansas City, whether it's in Pittsburgh or Kansas City or neutral site. To beat Kansas City, they've got to clean that up. Because whatever that was last night, if they take that to Kansas City, when they play Kansas City, because I believe they will possibly be playing catch, they're going to get run out the building. And I think Mike Tomlin knows that. That's why he's so passionate about, communicating and letting everyone know that my team's not very good. We didn't show anything last night. Not one thing in that game I walked away from saying, man, they're going to get Kansas City a run for their money. Not one thing. And I understand, T.J. Watt was covering Hollywood Brown on a wheel route out of the backfield. Man, Hollywood Brown was 4 yards in front of T.J. T.J. was grabbing for dear life. It just so happened Robert Griffith III threw a ball that looked like he was throwing from the outfield in baseball to third base on a straight line drive. Patrick Mahomes is not missing that throw to Tyreek Hill. And so you've got to clean those little bitty things up, and Mike T certainly knows that.
Not going to fool me on this one. This game yesterday was an anomaly to me, Key. The Steelers, as I understand, the internal perspective from Mike Tomlin and your perspective, right? Because you're thinking about the Chiefs. How do we win the whole thing? The reality is this team hasn't played since November 22nd, right? A lot of their stuff has been in flux. And I can understand James Conner not being there, having the anxiety of, are we going to play today? Are we going to play tomorrow? It just looked like they were out of sync. And I understand there's things for them to work on, but that has to play into it a little bit. We still are talking about a team that is 11-0, correct? An undefeated team. Now, they've blown only 3 teams out this year. Only 3 teams out this year. Every other game has been somewhat close, and I understand how that can be used against them in the argument, but I also can make the other argument by saying this team knows how to win ugly. Now, that may not have been their best performance last night. Maybe we want to see them blow out teams like KC does. But I've also seen Kansas City play down to the level of their competition as well. So, yes, they are explosive, but they've also allowed teams to stay in ball games that shouldn't have stayed in ball games as well. So I hear what you're saying, but yesterday's game isn't that big of an indictment on the Pittsburgh Steelers to me.
It's not that big of an indictment, but when you take on a team that's basically missing Mark Ingram,
J.K. Dobbins,
Lamar Jackson, and a host of other players, and you put that type of performance out on tape, it does not serve you well.
Okay, but Key, your body is all about rhythm, right? Like you get into your routine, you get into your rhythm. I know if I don't play in a game for a little bit, like in basketball, if I don't play in a game for like a week, I'm gonna be rusty. Let alone 2 weeks.
I understand what you're saying about a routine and rhythm and playing and all of those sort of things. It does not take you 4 quarters to get going. It does not take you 4 quarters to get going. Ben Roethlisberger was delivering the football. They were dropping it. It has nothing to do. You're messing around with RG3, who hasn't stepped on the field as a starter since week 17 a year ago. And that happened to be against you. And so when you are struggling to put away a team that is less than, there's concern from the head coach, which should be. Because if that was any team that had a quarterback that could play, Pittsburgh would have lost that game. And that's just the reality of it. They would have lost the game. If they had anybody else, if they were playing Kansas City, man, that score would be 50 to nothing probably.
You're right. They were ravaged.
Man.
The opponent was ravaged. They couldn't handle Baltimore's second and third string quarterbacks. One other note, Bud Dupree for the Steelers. We believe he has boy, does it ever. 8 sacks this season, and does it also hurt him financially? He's set to become a free agent in the spring.
It just depends on what the medical looks like.
Indeed, and they've also already lost Devin Bush to an ACL. So we'll see. They're perfect, but they've been able to do it with one hand tied behind their back, especially
like it was
on defense.
A year ago, doesn't it? Yeah.
Just a few weeks ago. But yeah, those 2 guys on the shelf the rest of the way.
But that's the last time they played was like a year ago.
It felt like it, right? November 22nd does feel like a year ago. Keyshawn, J. Will Zubin, presented by Progressive Insurance. All of our guests, including Dominique Foxworth, who will join us in moments, join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. On the way, Neek with a very interesting take. Simply put, why he thinks the Steelers have to go perfect, no margin of error, to win the Super Bowl. His rationale on the way after Key has this.